Yes, that's right. The Survivor Know-It-Alls are back live after the finale. Here I am live with everybody's favorite Gen Xer, Stephen Fishback. Stephen, how are you?
I take exception to that. I think under most categorizations, I'm Gen Y, and I'm, as free-spirited and irresponsible as any Gen Yer.
Yes. Stephen, I would also like to be known from here on out as Rob Sia. I think that would be my new name that I'd like to be known by. But Stephen, it was a night that some people did see coming, and you were one of them.
Bro, I know.
Congratulations, Michelle.
Yeah, and I really think that I'm the bigger victor here, because Michelle, I think we can all agree, did she really deserve to win? Up in the air, but no question that I deserved to win for calling the Michelle victory. So I deserve this. I am the more deserving victor.
Yes, okay. So, Steve, it's a big night for Stephen Fishback, a big night for Michelle. It's a night that we have a lot to talk about, Stephen, because a lot of people are unsatisfied with this ending. A lot of people wanted Aubrey to win, and I think it's very fair to discuss that tonight.
Yeah, I think we should. I think going into the finale, you had Aubrey and Sydney, who I think maybe even played a better game than Aubrey. Now, granted, she wasn't there in the final three, but certainly, Aubrey and Sydney, great players. Ty had a huge impact on the season, and then you do kind of have this dark horse candidate in Michelle, who played a social game, and she ends up taking all of the votes. Now, I have previously said that winning Survivor is the only qualification to win Survivor. I don't know if I've said that, but I like the sound of it. And, winning doesn't mean you're the better player or the smarter player or the more strategic player. It just means you won. It means a set of circumstances happened that gave you a victory, and that happened tonight. A set of circumstances.
All right, well, we will discuss those set of circumstances and a reunion show for the ages, all live here tonight. It's a very interactive show. We're going to have a big audience here watching this live. Hashtag RHAP to get your questions into the show. Also on our YouTube page at robisawebsite.com/YouTube. We are going to be speaking with the final three tomorrow. From what I understand, that Sydney has a flight tomorrow. So we will not be getting an exit interview with her tomorrow.
You're not going to give her a question either.
Well, we are going to talk to her mom. That's what I've been told, that she's going to be on a flight tomorrow, so we're not going to have an exit interview with Sydney. That is from, according to CBS, not by request of me. I would love to talk to Sydney. But we're going to speak with the final three and the winner, Michelle, tomorrow on the podcast, and then voicemails with Josh Wigler, and we will put a bow on everything from this season. Stephen Fishback. And Stephen, I'm very excited because you and I are going to be together in person very, very soon at Run It Up Reno next week.
Yeah, this next week I'm showing up on Tuesday to do some Running It Up Reno.
Yeah, Running It Up Reno. We're going to do a live RHAP on Wednesday night in Reno. If you're going to be in the area,
you can
come on down to that. Stephen Fishback, Boston Rob, Tyson. I believe Coach is going to be there. Josh Wigler, Anna Kate. So a jam-packed show in Reno next week. You can find out more at runitupreno.com. All right, Stephen.
No one told me Coach was going to be there when I agreed to go.
I don't know if he's official yet. Tyson says Coach is going. Okay. All right, so let's start off here with the Michelle of it all, okay? Because that she was somebody who was definitely very much behind the scenes, but she did get it done when it counted. Do you have anything to say about the veracity of the Michelle win? Do you have any issue with the Michelle win?
I don't know what to say. I feel like of the recent people who have won, Michelle is probably not among the best players, right? But then she won.
Not in the big move era. Now, certainly not in the era.
I'm not always a fan of big moves, but I think you need to at least. I think to prove yourself a good player, you need to get a vote to happen. You need to get a vote to go your way. You need to build an alliance. You need to make something happen. And I don't think we ever saw Michelle do that. Michelle's big moves, according to Michelle, were switching from the bottom of one alliance to the bottom of another alliance. And and then, granted at the end, she turned it on when it counted. She turned it on. She won a few crucial immunities. She won this, the jury removal button. And I think that was actually more symbolic almost than it was than it was actually effectual, because if you look at the numbers, it's like it wouldn't really have affected her win. But she, I,
You sound like one of the finalists, Stephen.
yeah, I know. Does the winner always deserve to win? Well, they won, so they did what they had to do to win. So Michelle won, and I feel bad, like raining on her
so
parade.
here's how we should frame this discussion, because Michelle was not a disaster. You can't even say she was bad. She was fine. She won challenges down the stretch. She won that final immunity, which is always crucial, and sometimes that's all Survivor comes down to, is just if you're the person who's able to win that final challenge, you can end up walking away and winning the game. She didn't piss people off, which was something that Aubrey said tonight, and she was somebody who did play a social game. She did ingratiate herself back into the Women's Alliance after she got left out in the cold on the Scott vote. So the resume is there. She did do things. I don't want to say...
I'm not sure I agree with that, though. I don't, like, what vote did she do? You're saying she was, like, behind the scenes, or you're saying she, what did she do? What are the things she did? You're saying she won challenges. Other than winning challenges, what did she do?
Well, for me, is the story more, did Aubrey get robbed by a potentially bitter jury than Michelle winning? Is that more of the story, Stephen? Because we always discuss in Survivor, there is no such thing as the bitter jury. We have this all the time when we talk about Russell Hantz, that Russell Hantz made the jury bitter against him. These people did not know him at the start of the game. Natalie White deserves to win because Russell Hantz made the jury bitter. In this case, in this instance, do you feel like did Aubrey error enough to make the jury vote for Michelle in your mind?
Here's the thing. Now that I've served on a jury, like, I feel like there's an inherent bitter factor to juries, where they're always going to be stewing, they're always going to be fretting, they're always going to be rooting for the underdog, regardless of what the underdog is doing. And they're going to be sitting there just begging the underdog to give them enough reason to vote for them. And this was, certainly in Cambodia last season, we were like, Kimmy, if Kimmy can just get to the finals and tell us one reasonable thing, we'll vote for Keith. Oh, Keith, if Keith can get to the finals and just make some sense of his game, just say one intelligent comment, we'll give it to Keith, and then Wentworth too. It was like, Wentworth, if she can get to the finals, you're always rooting for the underdog, regardless of whether or not they're the best player to play the game. So I think juries are inherently bitter, and maybe more so or less so. What can a contestant do? Did Aubrey do something wrong, or is it possible to play? Is it even possible to play an aggressive game and get to the end unless you're there with people who are hated more?
I think this is a very fair question and one we have to answer. Let's just start to talk about drill into specific things. In my mind, I felt like Aubrey lost the game to Michelle, fairly or unfairly, because Jason and Scott were bitter. Yes. And I felt like that they voted for the person who got them, or they voted against the person who got them rather than the person who was oblivious to the fact that they were going out on that night. Yeah. That was brought up in this tribal council. Do you feel like that Jason and Scott are the main reasons that Aubrey is not a Survivor winner tonight?
Yeah, I think it looked like Jason, Scott, and Julia kind of voted as a block, but the question is, who's the other vote? Is it Debbie or Nick who voted for? I've seen some people say that it was Debbie who voted for Michelle because.
I assumed that Debbie voted for Aubrey. That was my assumption.
I assumed that too, but some people on Twitter were saying that Debbie in her Ponderosa videos were saying she'd never vote for Aubrey. So I don't know. I would assume that Nick would vote for Aubrey because Nick is always going to vote for the strategically best player. I agree. I think Scott and Jason, and then with Julia kind of as a third. Julia's probably going to be somewhere. Probably vote for Michelle. Yeah, I think that they felt bitter and found a reason not to vote for Aubrey and found a reason to vote for Michelle. And when you're sitting there in the jury, you can create reasons and rationales to do the thing that your bitter, angry heart wants to do.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel like that those guys should be more accountable to this outcome? I mean, should they be out there talking about why Michelle should be the winner?
Yeah, I would like to hear that. I want to hear them say it.
I would have liked to have heard that in the reunion.
Well, we got some great TV moments.
Yeah. Sia would have voted for Ty. We got that. But why did Jason and Scott feel like Michelle was the more deserving winner than Aubrey? And if she is the more deserving winner than Aubrey, fine, so be it. I would have liked to have heard the rationale, because it seemed to me as a TV viewer, it was like, okay, you didn't know we were going home that night, so you're cool with us, but the person who was in on that, we're not cool with.
Yeah, I think that's often the case. I think, and it's a really challenging thing to make people like you and vote them out. And I think there's very few players who can do that. Now you look at like someone like Cochran. Cochran did it, but at the same time, Cochran's there next to Dawn and Sherry. So it's like it's almost as much as like winning Survivors is really as much as who you're sitting next to as what you do. You know, and maybe if Aubrey gets there with Ty and Sydney, she wins, because the jury really seemed to dislike Sydney in that fire-making challenge.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. And again, I just want to be abundantly clear tonight. I don't want to pile on Michelle, because Michelle didn't do anything wrong anywhere along the way, and I don't want to say she did not play a bad game. That she was certainly in instances lucky in that she didn't go to tribal council until day 24, 25. She certainly was lucky where she may have been voted out at the final 5 had Sydney won immunity when Joe got medevaced out of the game. That Joe medevac looms very large over the game right now, in terms of Aubrey's perspective. So Michelle made the moves that were on the table in front of her, but she doesn't have anything that's sort of big and flashy on her resume other than these critical wins down the stretch, and that's enough to win the game. So please don't paint me as anti-Michelle, because I am not.
And the other thing, like, nobody was taking Michelle to the end as a GOAT, right? This wasn't some case of like a Natalie Tanarelli or someone who's like being dragged to the end. In fact, everyone wanted Michelle out because they knew she could win the jury vote. And so the fact that nobody else they couldn't get her out, that she won those crucial immunities, that alone is testament enough to her game. And you don't get to day 39 without doing something right, unless you're a GOAT, right? Which she wasn't. You don't get to day 39 without making moves, without making friends, without giving your all to this game. And she had a really great quote that I thought really was exemplified so much about her. She says, I didn't get here by luck or by chance. I didn't slide through. I made little adjustments here and there and fought my way to my spot here. When I needed to win challenges, that's exactly what I did. And I think that's exactly, that's her game. She made little adjustments here and there, and she won crucial challenges. And that's enough. And that's more than most people did this season. That's more than Neil did this season. That's more than Nick did this season. It's more than...
You're going to get a tongue lashing for that, Steven.
Really? Am I?
Maybe.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I thought I was such a hot shit, but I'm not... Excuse me, family podcast.
Yeah. All right. So, but for Aubrey, though, and I was really, thinking about this before we came on, though, hard to come up with the one move she makes differently that results in her winning the game. And she actually, I think, caught a big break in that on day 38, Survivor, instead of making a final immunity challenge and having a final 2 on the season, she catches a huge break that Survivor decides to go with a twist to vote out one of the jury members. If they don't do that twist in that spot, she's voted out at final 3 and is the fallen angel who doesn't even make it to argue in front of the final tribal council.
Yeah, it's true. And a lot of people were saying how unfair the twist was to Aubrey. But in fact, like, if anything, that twist saved Aubrey. If it were a final 2, I don't think Aubrey, they're definitely voting Aubrey out in that.
Michelle takes Ty.
Yeah, 100%. So, what did you think of the twist, though? Because regardless of whether, like, which is more fair to Aubrey, like, what do you think of it by itself? Because I'm kind of on the fence, and I've seen a lot of fans are saying, it destroys the integrity of the game. Someone's on the jury.
No, stop.
I don't believe that.
I would look at it from a TV perspective, and they did this on Big Brother Canada. And we were to our own Jordan Parhar. And I actually liked it on Big Brother Canada because the way that they did it was that they sat them down. There was no competition. They sat down the final 3 and they said, nobody leaves this room until there is a consensus on who is the person. You guys have to agree with one person and they end up removing a person who they feel like, okay, this is going to be the most innocuous person. Let's just get rid of somebody who's not going to be, he'll just be neutral. Right. He's not going to blast us. As opposed to here, what we always love the final tribal council. The most famous moment in the history of Survivor is the Susan Hawk Snakes and Rats speech.
I thought it was David Murphy.
David Murphy is number 2.
I'm proposing to Carolina.
Yes, proposing to Carolyn. But so now you have a challenge where the person who wins the challenge gets to ostensibly remove the possibility of this great jury. I mean, that's always what we're talking about with these final tribal councils. Who is the person that went scorched earth at the final tribal council?
It looked like actually it might have been Neil. It really looked like Neil was gonna come out guns blazing based on.
And Neil was gonna rip, Michelle, maybe tie a new one and say pro Aubrey and vote for. Don't be mad because she won, and he was gonna make a real case for Aubrey. Now, does that change anything? Probably not, based on the votes that were cast. Would it be a 5-3 outcome as opposed to a what was it? 6-2.
It was 5-2. It was 5-2.
I'm sorry. It was instead of a 5-2. It would have bbeen 5-3 instead of 5-2. Yeah. Doesn't change anything ultimately, but maybe he's able to persuade people in the jury. I mean, I'm definitely not saying that this was the difference between Aubrey winning or losing. But I think it was a bad game design to do that. If anything, I would have rather have seen it after, even then, because then people would say, like, okay, maybe let me not go too crazy on that. I didn't like it on Survivor. In Big Brother, they did it after they cast their votes, which vote wouldn't have counted. But I feel like that even then, I feel like if Neil was going to, people wouldn't have carried on then. So I didn't love it, I have to be honest.
Yeah. You know what? I liked the experiment. I don't feel like it's some great injustice to the game or to the integrity of the game. I like playing with a format. I like that it adds a nice strategic wrinkle. It's honestly much less of a strategic wrinkle than a lot of the advantages that people get. A hidden immunity idol is a much more impactful item to play than this, because that's ending someone's game. That's potentially ending someone like Savage last season. His whole game was ended. A challenge advantage, that is someone's getting eliminated that episode that might not have gotten eliminated, and this just kind of tweaks the results. Now, it sucks to be the jury member eliminated, to have all these thoughts about what you're going to say and how you're going to have your final impact on the season, but really in terms of the actual game itself, probably doesn't have a huge impact on things.
I think I would have rather gone the other way, where then Michelle gets to pick a person that has 2 votes. At least then, of course, then she can have somebody, okay, here's my favorite person on the jury, and then she can double down on somebody.
Oh, I kind of like that. The extra for the jury. And in fact, that could end up biting her in the butt if she's wrong. And yeah. It could give someone who's on the fence the chance to split the votes, which I've learned you don't always want to split the extra vote, but
yeah. So, but it did not offend me from an integrity of the game perspective. I just felt like that it took something that's probably good about these finales and potentially took it out, because you knew Mount St. Neil was ready to go off again.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of Aubrey and her game, though, do you feel like, can you think of the move she could have made at a different point in time that would have changed this outcome? Because I really can't.
I mean, the thing was, I'm trying to think back, right? There wasn't really. I mean, Aubrey played until Joe's medevac. Aubrey was pretty much, playing. Aubrey and Sydney were playing really, really solid games, and maybe not voting out Debbie? Is that possible? If that actually could have been a game changer for her? Not getting rid of Debbie would have had, A, one more person who's with Aubrey, because she was very with Aubrey, and B, one more person who would not get votes at the end, because that's crucial. Who went home? Who did they? Who was the other person that episode?
That was when ultimately.
Debbie went home, but who was it supposed to be?
It was supposed to be they were going to split the votes on Jason and Scott, and then let's not revisit that whole Michigas again. But to me, I feel like that Aubrey, if her and Joe would have voted with Ty when Ty had the advantage, they were going to vote out Michelle that night. If she goes with Ty in that spot, they have 4 votes because of Ty's advantage. They take out Michelle. It's only Sydney and Jason left in the game. The problem is then the Joe medevac also destroys her game there at going into the final 4, where it's another 2-2 split. So there's really no scenario that you can outline other than her just winning the final 4 immunity, which she was not. She was leading in that challenge and then totally fell apart when it came to the puzzle.
And I also think that, in some situations you're just drawing dead, and I actually felt that
Yeah.
in Cambodia. Like, I thought, like, I have to be erratic now because I'm going to get to the finals and I'm not going to get any votes. So I need to, like, do crazy things and end up with really horrible people sitting next to me because otherwise this jury's not going to vote for me. And I think maybe Aubrey was in a similar situation where this was a jury that just didn't like someone like Aubrey. This was a jury of, like, jockey guys who didn't like being bested by kind of like a neurotic, nerdy girl. And that's just terrible luck. And that's terrible luck coming into the season. It's not a question of gameplay. It's a question of, like, the cards that, are dealt at the very beginning of the season. There just might not be a winning hand in there for you.
Would you say that Aubrey, this was on her in terms of how she presented herself to the jury? And, I'm asking the question, and I feel like that's not the case, because Jason, before that vote where him and Scott went out, that they were talking, I believe it was at the Nick vote. She's so great. She's doing this. She's doing that. She's she's a brawn as far as we're concerned. So it really did seem like that those guys had an about face in terms of Aubrey's game, because it seemed like they liked her as a player, even though they weren't necessarily working on the same side.
But that was when they were triumphant, so they could afford to be generous with her. That's when they're sitting pretty, and they're like, so it's easy for them in that situation to be like, oh yeah, we love Aubrey, she's so strong, she's so great. Then when Aubrey actually bests them, then it's like, then all those kind words are a little bit.
Yeah, she sucks. Yeah, she's no Michelle.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what about Sydney versus Aubrey? Sydney, Aubrey, Michelle. If that was the case.
I'm sorry.
Take Michelle out. Take Michelle out. Sydney, Aubrey, and Ty.
I think Aubrey wins that. I mean, you saw in the fire-making challenge how much the jury was voting against Sydney. And I think that's similarly where, like, Sydney was responsible for those guys' demise more than Aubrey was. And I think you have, that sensibility of, like, I don't want the person who turned on me to win, and that's why playing that middle game is really, really, really challenging. That Sydney played, and not a great idea. And in fact, like, I wonder if we went back. I think sticking with your alliance and being a loyal ally might be one of the most successful long-term skills on Survivor. I think if we looked at all the various winners over time, probably most of them kept to their alliance pretty closely.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you feel like that is an unfair study? Because, I mean, should you only be looking at it over, like, the last 15 seasons or so like that? Because early on, I mean, that was sort of the conventional strategy. Do you feel like does that not account for the game evolving, the evolution of the game that you popularized?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, as much as the game evolves, like, people are always going to feel betrayed and angry when they're on the jury. And I think you've got to. That's why, like, sticking to the people who you're sticking to, is the safest path. Or if if you betray someone who feels that they have an obligation from you, they're going to really dislike you for it, and you'll never have their vote. I think that is the danger of voting blocks. Like, I think that's why it's such a dangerous game to play, and I think that's why, like, the playing the center is a dangerous game to play, because everyone feels like you're with them, so you are, But ultimately, again, like, really the only strategy that works is just be at the end with people who are less liked than you.
Mm-hmm. And it was tough this season because you had, a lot of likable people down the stretch. You wonder, was it a mistake to get rid of Jason? How many votes was he going to be picking up at the end?
Right. I mean, he probably had a couple, though. He probably had Scott
certainly,
Julia, maybe
possibly.
Nick. But it's true, and I mean, that's the way I feel about Debbie too. It's like this idea. You have to get to the end to win at the end, but you also have to win at the end to win at the end. And it's better to but it's hard. It's a tricky game.
Help me wrap my head around this final tribal council too. Did you feel like Aubrey was good or bad in the final tribal council, and was Michelle good or bad or neutral box?
I thought both. First of all, I thought Aubrey and Michelle were both stellar. Right? Aubrey especially was so good. Like, Debbie asks her, Aubrey, like, would you have saved me if I was lying on the road dying of thirst? Would you have given me a drink of water? And Aubrey, heartfelt answer, oh yes, it was so terrible seeing you in pain. We had such a close bond. This was the hardest one, and you were a threat. And I feel like that's the answer for Debbie. And and then when Aubrey shoots Michelle down, I thought that was so funny when. Sydney was asking Michelle a question like, did you know I was about to get voted out? And Aubrey's like, did you even know what the vote was? I mean, I thought that was great. I just thought Aubrey had such a and in response to Scott's question too. Scott says to Aubrey, like, why should I vote for you? And Aubrey's like, because I'm a competitor and you're a competitor, even though we had different ways of competition. Michelle did a strong job too. What did you think, Rob?
I don't know. I mean, nobody blew me away in terms of anything. I wonder if everybody's minds were already made up, which I suspect was the case. I mean, could Aubrey have hit the note harder that the biggest move of the game, which was at that final 8 to get Ty to come over and vote with her, that was her move, that she could have owned that a little bit more and sort of like, really put the onus on Jason and Scott of that was where I got you, and sort of like really challenge them on that. I mean, this is probably asking for her to be omnipotent, that she knows how they're going to vote that night. I'm just trying to think of what she could have done differently, and I don't know. I don't know if there's anything she could have said. I thought she was good. I thought that Michelle answered her questions. I like that she cried. I don't know if it was strategic, but I thought that she hit that note, which is, I think, you want to do in that final tribal council. So she was good. Ty was a disaster all over the place.
Ty was really bad, and I think he's hurt from not being a native English speaker. I think it's really, because it's stressful.
Certainly.
In the best conditions to like answer those questions. You feel guilty. You're facing a lot of antagonism at that final tribal council. Let me tell you, Rob, as someone who's been there, you really
easy.
Yeah, you come into that room and you like feel the hate coming at you, and it's hard to like be poised and respond to it and be thoughtful and think like, what do I have to say, like how do I address this person's question without pissing off that person, and I can't even imagine doing that in French. Like I just I can't even, like, so the fact that Ty did as well as he did is a testament to something.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that spoke to the fact that Ty, as the game went on, where he's having more and more of these conversations and getting crossed up and things like this and wanting to do the right thing, I think that's a direct result of, this English as a second language, also combined with his personality, I think, as well. I think he had a personality that was not necessarily conducive to this game either.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think he was like too sensitive a soul. And then coming into that final tribal council, he knew he had to hit the Scott point, but he didn't know what to say. And it was like every time someone asked him a question, he would like come back to Scott, and he would give some kind of like jumbled thing. Oh, I had to get out Scott. He was the Scott of it all. Scott. But he never like actually got the story straight, And it was I felt like he just being well spoken in that situation is really hard. And I think that I'm like pretty well spoken in my normal life, and coming into that tribal council I was tongue tied. So I have a lot of sympathy for him. I thought Michelle did well. I thought you looked at those jurors and they were basically saying, like I said, like, you show up at the final tribal, you want the underdog to just give you enough of a reason to write her name down, and that's what like Jason and Julia's question was like, give me enough of a reason to write your name down, and Michelle did. I thought she did.
Did you feel like Ty should have been allowed to bring Mark the Chicken to the final tribal council? Because I feel like that was so... It didn't help him, but I feel like that was very unfair and very much a prop to pander to the jury of, hey, my lovable chicken is here too. I felt like that should have been out of bounds. Ty should not be able to bring Mark the Chicken to final tribal council.
Yeah, what would you have done if you're on the season and like you're with Ty and he's like, oh, I'm bringing the chicken? Would you have eaten the chicken?
No, you can't eat the chicken. I mean, I'm one of the other contestants. I think I go to the producers like, come on, really? Really? Stop.
Yeah. So you'd whine about it. You'd whine.
No, I'd whine a lot, yeah, and see if they did anything, but probably not, even at that point. I did love the point where Jeff is like, Jeff seemed almost like frustrated with Mark the Chicken in the actual taping of the season, but Jeff, like, outside of the season, loves Mark the Chicken. Yeah. He's like, Ty, unless you have a plan to get Mark the Chicken back, all right, let's get rid of the chicken now.
I'm surprised that they made error, like well, we're gonna send this thing on its way to die in the elements, like, farewell, chicken.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be like that scene where, he like lets Mark the Chicken go, and then Mark the Chicken is like coming back to him, and he's like, no, get out of here. I hate you, get out of here.
And then Mark runs at the airport terminal, like, just as they're boarding the flight.
Yeah. And then he's got to like be really mean to him just to get him to go away for his own benefit. All right. Yeah. Steven, what else from tonight's finale? Do you want to touch on the reunion show?
Okay. Well,
Yeah, I mean, the reunion show was kind of wacky. I mean, we always make jokes about like, who are they not going to talk to at the finale, and so it was interesting to me. Jeff opened it up and went to Michelle as he should, and tried to talk to Michelle. Okay, Michelle, here's your chance, sort of like own your game. What was your game about? And I felt like she struggled to sort of like give a concise sort of like here's what it is like and sort of like put it in like bullet points of what she did. And then we went to Aubrey, and I thought it was interesting that Jeff did not touch on that Aubrey the player. He focused the time on Aubrey the personality, and I felt like that Jeff, maybe whether he was reading the room or he didn't want to open a can of worms, that he did not want to get into, hey, Aubrey, do you feel like you should have won? Who would have? Why didn't you guys? Like, he almost was like, Aubrey, oh, your personality. Oh, you were like Cochran. You got out there, and then you helped so many people with your personality and what you did. But I thought that was very interesting that Jeff did not even want to discuss Aubrey's game with Aubrey.
Yeah, and maybe and maybe that's probably because like you don't want to leave the season on a bitter note, and I think like maybe it's like the end of Samoa with like that kind of like put like a sour like taste in everyone's mouth about that season, and with basically everyone being like, well, Russell deserved to win, and Natalie's just sitting there, and how does that end well if he asks Aubrey to I don't know. I mean, I think what everyone wants to know is like, jury, why did you vote for Michelle? But yeah, I don't know.
We didn't even explore it. And then so we went into talking with Ty about his personality, and then we just hear like this, like I'm like, what's going on? There's like a woman is like yelling,
heckler,
and Jeff is being heckled. I'm like, oh my god, what's going on here? And then Jeff is like acknowledging the person who's heckling him. I'm like, is this a kid? What's going on? And then we see, we have no idea what's going on here. I mean, was this scripted, Steven?
This was definitely not scripted. I think this was definitely not scripted. You could see that Jeff was kind of rattled by it later. And this is like, I actually think, like, it was kind of an annoying moment, I thought. But I thought Jeff handled it really well. Like, he come, the celebrities walking down, which was like, like I tweeted this, but like, must be pretty nice to be a celebrity and just like walk into other shows. But the celebrities like coming onto your stage, like, what do you do? And I thought he handled it incredibly well. He gave her a moment, and then he transitioned into the next thing. And like, it was an interesting moment. Like, it was a fun moment. No, you're shaking your head.
It was just so bizarre. Like what is, first off, that I always get annoyed with Sia. Like, if she has like this crippling anxiety where we can't even see her, well, why is she just walking up on stage during live telecasts of things? Like, you would think that she'd be like oh, backstage. Oh, Ty, I just wanted to say I was a really big fan. Why come out on a live TV show?
Yeah,
right. So is she just sitting there in the audience and then she can't contain herself as Jeff is talking with Ty, that she's just like, oh my god, Ty's the best, Ty's awesome, and everybody's just sort of looking at her? Is that what happens? And Jeff's like, okay, let's do this now that you're standing up and yelling. Is she basically to the Survivor reunion show as Eliza is to the Live Know-It-All, Steven?
Well, Eliza doesn't ever just like jump the stage, like
not yet.
Yeah. You know what? I think that maybe when you're a celebrity, you're so used to like having everything go your way. Well, you're a celebrity, Rob. Is this how it is for you?
Stop it. No pander. Where's Mark the Chicken? Stop pandering to me. All right. And then Jeff went right into Drew Carey then also, and it was like he was like really thrown off, and Jeff was like frozen on the stage. He's like, all right, what am I doing? Am I going here? Am I going there? What do I do? Okay. All right. Like, Jeff, like take a deep breath.
But like, it's hard to. I mean, can you imagine that with like 10 million people watching, and you're like,
believe me, I get like that with 300 people at the Know-It-Alls. I can understand, but I mean Jeff just like came off like frantic at one point.
Yeah, I mean, I like that he kind of owned up to like his own indecision about like what he was doing. I thought that was like a nice sort of like, I think one of the wonderful things about Jeff is his like radical honesty, and I think I thought that was that.
But it's so interesting. It's such a difference between like on location, on set, Like, he's such like everything's under control, but then on these live shows, like he's just like completely manic in terms of like, trying to move the show along.
Yeah, there's a lot to get into, and can you imagine like a live show where like you're interviewing someone like Ty, and he's trying to get something out, but he's like not succeeding, and you're like,
he's like, all right, let's get
to passing, but I can't be a jerk, but like how do I get to the next thing?
Yeah. It's just like I feel like that if you are sort of like getting like the thought bubble over his head, it's like he's imagining people on their couch with the remote control and they're ready to change the channel at any second, and he's just like, "Oh wait, hold on. Okay, he's got more stuff. Hey, what's over here? Okay. All right. This is exciting." Like he's just like I feel like he could just slow down the pace a little bit in the reunion show. I know there's a lot to get to.
This may actually be the least people talked to from the cast, because it was I don't know actually, because obviously Karen Moen didn't even have half the cast on stage, but you had it was just, let's see, Michelle, Aubrey,
with the top three,
Jason, Scott,
Debbie,
you get Debbie, Julia. You got Julia, no, you got Joe too, so that's 8. That's probably around where Karen Moen was. Yeah.
I thought we spent too much time with Dr. Joe. That was, if I was going to give one big note, I felt like too much time with Dr. Joe. I didn't think anybody cared particularly too much with Dr. Joe.
I loved it because like I met him and he was an awesome guy. So it's like, oh, cool, yeah, I like that guy. But I hear you. Maybe nobody.
I think I would have rather heard from 4 more players than Dr. Joe. It was a long segment with Dr. Joe.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was cool. Like, I don't need to hear from like, hey, Darnell, did you have a great journey out there? Like, no offense to Darnell, who I'm sure like had a great journey, but like I actually would prefer to hear Dr. Joe than Darnell.
You're being a Dr. Joe sycophant.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I agree for the most part. I want to hear to as many people as possible. But it used to be, when he used to hit everybody, it got to be one of those things. And Carolina, you're here. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Like, so did you have fun? Did you have fun?
Yeah, exactly. Like, you don't need that. Like, you want something that adds insight to the season. You want something that adds, like, depth and, like, understanding to the audience. At least I do. And, it would have been great to hear about more from the jury. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, all in all, a lot still to unpack. Looking forward to the exit interviews to get to the bottom of more of this. Let's jump into some of your questions. Oh, of course, Steven, you're going to have a post-finale People blog?
Going to have a blog up tomorrow. Hard to say who's going to win the fishy. No, Michelle wins the fishy. Michelle wins the fishy.
Michelle wins the fishy. There you go. All right. Let's go to Gregory McBean says, Isn't Jeff dying for a tied vote? Why would they take off a member from the jury? Does Survivor want a tied vote, Steven?
I don't know if they want a tied vote. I mean, realistically, the odds, like, I guess if it was a final 2 and it was a tie, or final 3 and it was a tie, the third person might vote. I don't know. There's not really a great solution to it. Maybe they prefer not having it.
Mm-hmm. But if this was 4-4 and then Ty cast the deciding vote, that's pretty exciting, right?
It would have been really exciting. It would have been great TV. There was a lot of great moments in this finale.
Yeah.
Fire making. We got to talk about the fire making. Was that a bad decision? Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that. What do you think about this for a tiebreaker? What if the tie is between Aubrey and Michelle? Mark the Chicken goes in the middle of them. They both have to call him. Whoever he goes to wins the season.
That's like Henry and Ribsy.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about we started talking about this before. I had mentioned that I thought Ty had a really terrible night. The idea of Ty to vote with Aubrey at that Final Four, that's a disaster, right?
Well, I thought so. Dalton tweeted at me and was said, well, if he thinks it's a Final 2, then it's not a bad move, because keeping Aubrey in the game, really like assures his spot in the Final 2. But he's going to the Final 2 anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Maybe not. I don't know. It's not. I mean, but like I thought when I saw it, like terrible decision. You're giving either Aubrey or Sydney basically, a huge game-winning opportunity here. Of course, it turned out to not be a game-winning opportunity for Aubrey, who did win. But yeah, I thought so. What did you think?
No, I thought the same thing. I did not understand why he voted with Aubrey. And again, it's to me, it was more kudos to Aubrey for getting Ty to vote against his best interest in that spot. Another one of these times where she's able to push the right buttons on Ty and get him to do what she wants him to do. So I thought that he did a bad job with that. But you're right. If he is believing it's a Final 2, I could see it more. It's interesting that on day 37, Aubrey is the one saying, like, that's it. There's no more challenges. There's no more challenges. Like, they're not going to do more challenges. And Ty is the one like, I feel like there's more. I feel like that they didn't say, like, that's it. You'll face the jury tomorrow.
Well, it was weird because it was day 37. Like, what did I think was going to happen for the next 2 days?
I don't know. It's a good question, and one that I will get into in the exit interviews tomorrow. Sydney, I felt like Michelle really did her dirty there with the fire making challenge too, because Sydney says to Michelle, "Hey,
should I be practicing?
Should I practice making the fire?" Michelle's like, "I wouldn't. That's not going to happen."
Then she says, "You can practice if you want."
If you want to, really throw her under the bus there.
Yeah, but Michelle was really sure, and that's what that was my problem with Michelle's game, is that she, I kept on thinking, her big move was going to be getting Ty to flip, and she didn't do it. She never got anyone to flip.
Mm-hmm. She really never had to. I mean, she doesn't go to tribal council until the merge, and she gets not one but 2 votes where she doesn't have to actually cast a vote because of the medevac. So she's only at 6 tribal councils, or before we get to the she only has to vote 6 people off, not counting Neil from the jury.
Yeah. Yeah, not a lot going on. Yeah, but no, you're right. But even so, it always seemed like that people were coming to her at the last minute and being like, "Hey, you want in on this? You'll vote with us."
Mm-hmm. What about Sydney? We've talked about her game. You've been very outspoken about how she might have been the best player on this season. Do you feel like that she had one major mistake that she made?
I mean, certainly losing that final immunity challenge seems to be the deal breaker. I mean, I thought Sydney was. I mean, you know what? It looked like Sydney actually did piss off the jury. I don't think Sydney's winning this game, and I think I say that she was the best player of the season. And looking back, if with a little bit of time to reflect, I mean, again, this is all coming to us so fresh. I think I might revise that estimate, because she played that middle position, and while she was able to balance between alliances and vote off basically anyone she chose, right? I mean, she and Aubrey were always on the right side of the vote. She inherently doing that was alienating people. You really have to be a Tony Flacos to pull that move, and I don't know if anyone really else has been able to do that successfully.
Yeah. Whereas Michelle was playing the middle, but nobody was really holding it against her. Nobody was feeling like, well, you're not driving the bus. You're sort of like you're there in the back seat, but you're not the person making the move against me. So I'm not as mad at you.
And maybe that is the way to do it, I hate to even say it, but maybe that's the way to do it. You go out there, just be really nice to everyone, and then, just do just enough. Maybe the big move is the wrong move.
Yeah, I mean, then what we would say normally about that is sure, you can go out there and do that, but then good luck getting the votes at the end, because then people will say, look at your resume and say, what did you do? But there is a case to be made for that, certainly against a player that we think that was a very good player in Aubrey. Not a perfect player, but somebody who played probably, in our minds, the better of the 2 games.
Yeah, but it's not. But again, it's not like Michelle did nothing. You have to do enough, right? And Michelle had something she had a number of individual wins, right? At least 3, maybe 4.
I believe she won individual immunity twice, and then the reward challenge once.
Okay, so
I think she had 3 individual wins, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, and some really theatrical moments, and I thought that she did enough.
Yeah. Okay. So then Noah Wagner says, I think Aubrey had one of the best Final Tribal Council answers ever. Does this just prove that Final Tribal Council performance doesn't even matter?
Yeah, I don't think it matters that much.
I don't think it really matters that much.
Maybe you could sway one vote one way or another. Allegedly, I lost Tyson's vote in Tocantins.
Right.
But, I think that overall, and that was a really epically bad performance. So, I think overall it's probably not really affecting anything.
Okay. This is from Taken Oasis. Wants to say, Michelle's strategy was to play both sides without being caught, like Jeremy. Why is she less deserving when she didn't even need idols? Okay. Steven, could you make the comparison between Jeremy's game, which you saw up close and personal, and Michelle?
Wow, I want to text Jeremy right now and tell him. I think that I think that get I want his perspective actually. Like I'd love to hear his perspective, like what the difference is. From my perspective, I think Jeremy was much more active, right? Jeremy was the person who was making decisions. He was building alliances. He was building coalitions. He was kind of playing the Godfather role. He was making everyone feel comfortable. He was bringing people into the fold. Yeah.
Well, okay, so yeah, I think that's probably not a great comparison. I mean, that Jeremy just really did such a great job of making everybody very comfortable with him throughout the game, and was working with had a lot of different fingers in a lot of different pies of things along the way. I want to know the better example. I want to talk about a couple other winners. One, the person that we've made this comparison a little bit, but I want to get your take on it. The winner of my own season, Jenna Maraska.
Right.
What do you think about Aubrey? I'm sorry. What do you think about Michelle's game in comparison to Jenna? Because I feel like that you could make a lot of similarities.
I think Michelle played a better game than Jenna did. I think Michelle was much more active throughout the entire season. You had Jenna, wanting to quit at one point. You had her sort of lying around. You never saw that from Michelle. Michelle gave her all the time, and Michelle probably won more. I mean, I don't remember Amazon that well. Sorry, it was a long time ago.
Yeah. Jenna did win 4 immunity challenges.
Is that right?
Just to be fair, I do think you make a good point where there's a point where Jenna wants to leave the game. There's a point where Jenna is saying vote out me instead of Heidi, whereas Michelle is voting out her friend in Julia, which is probably her biggest move in the game. They both end up having a good end run at the end of the game, so I think that we're probably talking about something similar. Also, just a shout out to my good friend Jenna, who very sadly her dad passed away last week, and I haven't mentioned that on the podcast. My heart is very much with her awesome. Over the course of this past week. But what about Sandra? Sandra is somebody else who I feel like should be in this conversation. Could you make the comparison between Michelle and Sandra?
I think, from my perspective, I think Sandra plays a more active game than Michelle does. I think Sandra really hustles around trying to, I think what's so great about Sandra's game is that she will hustle. She will put bugs in people's ear, right? And here's where.
Is that what happened to Jennifer? Right.
Yeah. I think with when she got Russell to turn on Coach, she'll do that. And I think Sandra's really great at both trying to put those bugs in people's ear and then also always voting with the majority. I would say that at least from what we can see on TV that Sandra's great is stronger. Would you agree with that? What do you think? You're making me answer all these I'm gonna I'm gonna get Jenna people angry at me and Michelle people angry at me.
But the Sandra thing is so interesting because both games that Sandra played, that she had somebody in Johnny Fairplay and Russell that really just brought out this spark in her, which really was able to paint her as this figure that was up against somebody who was that was trying to get them out of the game, and they were able to sort of she was really able to paint herself as a hero in the eyes of the jury in both cases. The first time around she's going up against Lil. The second time around she has Russell there in the final 3. Parvati is there as well. It's interesting. I think that maybe you could sort of look at this final tribal council even and compare it to Parvati versus Sandra to Aubrey versus Michelle.
Sure, and Russell and Ty.
Yeah, Russell and Ty. That's why Russell liked him so much. All right, let's get back to the questions.
Well, the one thing though I do want to say is that and something that JT has said about Sandra, is this is a mom of 2. This is a former soldier. Her husband's in the military in Afghanistan. She's someone you want to vote for, and I really think that's what it comes down to. I think your help.
Who you like the most?
If you have who you like, who you think deserves the money, if you're going on Survivor, and listen up, season 34 people, before you ship out, have a kid. Do it. Get married. Have a kid. If you don't have time, adopt a kid, because that's a story you can tell at the end.
That's good. Or a chicken.
Yeah, we've seen the chicken thing doesn't work as well.
Yeah, but get that Sia money, Steven.
Yeah.
Sia's still watching the show.
Yeah, Keith got it without a chicken, though. Keith just had the Toto, the tuk-tuk.
Yeah. All right. So Matthew Wodge wants to say, what celebrity do you think would have given you $50,000 at your respective reunions?
You're up first.
There's somebody that was watching and said, like, well, all right, Fishback, I love you, man. You were the best. Let me give you some money.
Oh man, John Ashbery.
Just to be straight, though, so Sia said, no, I'm not giving this money to charity. I'm giving this money to Ty because he deserves it.
No, it was both. It was like, I'm giving $50,000 to you and $50,000 to a charity of your choice.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty good. So, Steven, does it annoy you that Ty ends up doing considerably better than Aubrey on this season financially?
Yeah, it doesn't annoy me. It doesn't annoy me. I mean, like no one deserves anything, right? I mean, we're all lucky to get what we do. We're lucky to be alive, Rob. We're lucky to be alive.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So
every day is a blessing, regardless of how much money C is giving you.
So nihilistic, right?
Yeah.
All right. So Van says, does Neil deserve a second chance after getting most of the raw deals in Survivor history? He got medevaced. He got voted out of the jury. Somebody had a funny comment. Could Neil have used his hidden immunity idol to avoid getting voted out of the jury?
Yeah.
Does this help make the case for Neil to return to Survivor, Steven?
We're not going to see Neil again. I think that he didn't really have, that much impact on the game. Yeah, right.
I don't know if this helps the case.
Yeah.
I did feel like that Michelle, I felt like, gained something by him, like, really dressing her down in front of everybody. I think if you were a viewer watching the show, I think it's like, you know what, now I want Michelle to win.
Yeah.
Now I'm rooting for her.
You mean gain something not with the jury, but with the viewers?
Yeah, I don't think that the jury really changed their minds, but I think as a viewer, I think that a lot of people said, now I'm rooting for her. I hope she does it just to spite him.
Yeah, I think so too. I think people, it's funny, like, I think a lot of people really were rooting for Michelle by the end of this, and I think, one thing she said at the end was like, I always remained upbeat and positive, and I think that you really get that from her, is that was part of why she's so likable. She always seemed happy. She always had a smile on her face. She always was upbeat and positive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know what? Can I just say something? Is it possible that we've been spoiled by like really amazing winners over these last couple of years? Is that possible between Tony and Natalie, Jeremy and Tyson, and all these people that are coming in and making these like big exciting plays and really dominating socially and strategically? Isn't it possible that we sort of got spoiled?
I guess, yeah, I think so, yeah. Why? Yeah, I think you're right. Like it's normal that like a normal person would win, and especially on an all-new player season, like it's not always going to be just like like lightning shooting out of people's fingertips. Sometimes it's just going to be like a nice person and a neat lady makes it to the end, and that's enough.
Yeah. Let's look at the other side of things. P.L. Mercier says, I think Aubrey's overrated. She got a mastermind edit, but is it possible that her social game wasn't that great? Do you think that to any degree Aubrey is being overrated by the people that we're talking to?
I think to a certain degree we're saying Aubrey is doing like, incredible, crazy things. I think she's, but like ultimately, there's no like, ultimately like Survivor. You don't need to be a mastermind to do well at it. You just need to get more people than the other guys got. And I think Aubrey had some really great social moments on this season where she was able to pull people, especially particularly Ty, over to her side. And I think she kept Joe as her loyal ally the whole season. We talk about that as a joke, but like Aubrey maintained that relationship. Aubrey did that, and I think she did enough to be considered a really, really good player. Again, like, what does a mastermind mean? Boston Rob, like, getting people to go off in twos together and report back on each other like they're like the East German secret police. Like, that's a that's one guy out of the 500 guys who have played.
Mm-hmm. And playing on his fourth time where he's really like honed his craft and everything like that. Like, it's a very hard game.
Yeah, and Aubrey for her first time, I thought she played a really tremendous game.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. We got a couple other questions about the reunion show. This is from TJ Gamir. Wants to know why didn't they do a loved ones challenge this season? Did you miss it?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always an emotional moment for the season to me. Like, they had the letters, or didn't they have some loved ones thing? They had like
Julia got a letter from home. Yeah.
They had the emotional items. Maybe it was hard to get them out there for whatever reason. I always like the loved ones episode. Actually, it's fun to see people's families. It's fun to see people interact with their families. I think it would have been great in this season. Get Sydney's mom out there, get like Ty's whatever.
You
out
loved
there.
Sydney's mom. You were saying that you want to see her on Blood versus Water season.
Yeah, how great would Sydney and Sydney's mom be on a Blood versus Water season? That duo is enough to justify a Blood versus Water season.
Yeah, and you were very upset they didn't talk to Sydney at the reunion.
I couldn't believe it. Arguably like the biggest player of the season. Arguably, I think certainly with Aubrey, the two of them. Not even a question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You think it's fine?
Yeah. I mean, it would be great to hear from her. I'd love to hear from her on an exit interview. I wonder if she's really annoyed. I wonder if she's kind of pissed about everything, the way it all worked out.
She looked a little. I mean, she's been zero active on social media, at least as far as I've seen. Yeah. I mean, she looked a little salty.
Yeah. Steven, did this whole game hinge on Joe eating too much meat on the reward challenge last week?
It's like it hinges on so many.
What
things.
happens if Joe stays in the game? What's the story tonight?
Yeah.
Joe stays in the game. They go to Tribal Council. Michelle or Sydney gets voted out at Final Five.
Yeah, I think you got Joe, likely Joe, Aubrey, and Ty going to the end together, and Aubrey's winning.
And Aubrey wins. Basically, she was right there. All she had to do was say, hey, Joe, slow down.
Yeah.
Joe, be careful.
If Neil hadn't been medevaced, Aubrey might have gone home that night.
The Final Destination thing, live by the sword, die by the sword. She advanced in the game due to the first medevac, and then ultimately it was the second medevac, which was her undoing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunate. What are you gonna do? Steven, do you want to touch on your winner's edit at all? Do you want to gloat about that before we start to wrap up?
I know that people, I hear a lot from people who say, talk more about the winner's edit. No, I hear a lot from people who are like, enough with the winner's edit. And I'll try to tone it down. There is a similarity between talking about the story that the producers are telling, right? Because ultimately the producers have to make the people, they're turning hours and hours and hours, thousands of hours of footage into a very concise, tight story. And the edit is the word for that story. It's like, are you including a detail or not? And as a writer, like, I'm always interested, like, what are the details you include to like build a story that makes sense at the end?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll try to tone it down next season. I get carried away and excited and interested in like exploring it and talking about it, but I certainly hear that some people feel that it becomes technical and then you lose kind of some of the fun of the game.
But I think it's almost impossible to avoid. I think as a podcaster, we get into the scenario where it's like, well, what should we just pretend that's something that people are not talking about? It's so pervasive in terms of that as a community of Survivor fans, we are so just much more connected, where it used to be like, okay, there'd just be like this one sort of, forum on Survivor Sucks, and you could just not go there, and people weren't talking about that. But now we're all connected between Facebook and Twitter and Reddit and, different, Survivor pages on Facebook and Periscope, and it's basically one big homogenized community at times, and, that sort of things where people are talking about winners, that it does start to spread virally.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's right. And to some degree, you'd be a moron to be like, oh, I think Nick's in the best position now, even though Nick hasn't had any airtime for the past 5 episodes. Like, oh, Nick could really win it all. Like, there's no way, it would be disingenuous to speak from that perspective too. But I know that I do get carried away, and I will try to restrain myself.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. So, Steven, first, before we sign off for the night, a couple of exciting things. I said it at the end of last week's show. We were trying to lock down our RHAP event coming this summer to the Windy City, to Chicago. I can tell you that we will be having our first ever RHAP Con, RHAPCon is the working title right now. RHAPCon Chicago will be in Chicago July 8th and 9th. So we don't have I don't have a ticket information or anything, but what my plan is to try to have like a day of podcasts that we're going to be at DePaul University, and very excited to come out there for that. So stay tuned for more information on that, and we'll try to have some bar functions at nighttime as well. So I'm very excited to go out to Chicago this summer, Steven.
Wow, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting stuff. We're going to talk some Survivor, and some Big Brother will be going on at that time, so that's very exciting for those of you guys who can make it out there for that. Again, I'll try to have more information in the next week or so. And then also the RHAP Bell shirts are back and available for a few more days. Go to robhasawebsite.com/Bell shirts for that. Steven, all right, so for you, we're going to Reno. We're going to podcast it all when we're there?
Well, you said yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm very excited.
Wednesday.
Yeah. Wednesday. But anything else?
No.
We'll see. I'll bring my stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Good stuff. All right. Steve, do you have a hashtag?
Oh my God! Why do you do this to me? You just inflict this on me week after week.
Is there anything in particular you want to talk about? Any hashtag you want to throw out there?
I mean, I think Winner's Edit deserves the hashtag for this. Is that too ubiquitous?
Fair enough. Do you want to touch on millennials versus Gen X?
What's your take on this, Rob? Is this a good idea, or is it Nicaragua too?
Well, it's not Nicaragua 2. I just don't feel like that this is like the ultimate rivalry that's going on. It just seems like where Nicaragua was like, okay, it was people over 40 versus people under 30. This is like people in their 20s versus people in their 30s and early 40s. Like it's like people a little bit older and then people that are younger. So to me, it seems like not the greatest rivalry. I wasn't itching to see this season, but it really just comes down to, is it a good cast?
Right.
Are there players out there? But I do think that's probably going to be a couple of annoying weeks of like typical millennials. This is what you're doing. Like, hey, you just are these old Gen Xers. You don't know about the new hotness.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's like for a moment or two, for like, it's going to be a little bit annoying, and then it's going to be fine. Like
I'm just going to shut the comment section down for like the first 3 or 4 weeks, and then we'll turn it back on once we get to the swap. Okay. All right. Steven, what a pleasure it's been to podcast with you after each of these episodes. I really do feel like that while it's always been a lot of fun, I do feel like that you have come back this season from playing in season 31, and you have been so locked in all season long. I just want to commend you for your outstanding work.
Oh my gosh, yes. Thank you so much. That's so nice. Angry and bitter for my humiliation.
No, I really mean it. That you've been, I feel like you've been really into it. That's the most important thing to me, and I really think that you've done such a great job, and it's makes it fun every week to come on here and talk to you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's always it's a pleasure for me as well.
Good. Happy to do it every week. Hopefully, I hope you don't get a better contract from someplace else or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. Yeah. Also, thanks so much to Scott St. Pierre behind the scenes, getting all of these Know-It-Alls episodes set up every week, and also pulling these questions from you guys during every episode. And as well, thanks everybody who's watching the show live and listening to the podcast, because it does make it really, really fun to come on here and have a place to be able to talk about all of this malarkey, right?
Yeah. Is that a soundboard?
It sounds like a bunch of malarkey to me.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah, seriously, thank you everyone who week after week comes, who takes the time to listen, who tweets comments that and posts comments and all the business. It really is. It's a thrill. It is a thrill, and I hope Survivor never goes off the air and we can continue doing this forever.
Yes, all right.
I do hope that.
And if worse comes to worse, let's see if we can get Sia to sort of bankroll. We'll do our own like Survivor Brooklyn and just podcast about it, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, everybody. Have a great night. We've got our exit interviews with the top 3, plus get your voicemails in for Josh Wigler and I to discuss. Go to robhasawebsite.com/voicemail or 323-282-RHAP. Hope to see at least a few of you guys, hopefully several of you guys in Reno next week. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye.